Yes, sir.
Let's
You good
go.
now? Let's run it. We're
All
so
right.
back.
Absolutely. We're back. I think you're officially a friend of the podcast now. Three times. This is the first time for charm launch week.
Crazy work.
Guys, please share the space, but we got quite a few people in here. So why don't we get started? Omnia, you want to give a little brief introduction to you and Kinetic, or especially for all the people who might be new this week and excited for the launch?
Yeah, cool. So Omnia here, one of the co-founders of Kinetic, basically building the native liquid staking protocol for Hyperliquid. We are officially launching tomorrow, so stay tuned for the launch post, of course, which allows everyone to liquid stake their hype for the first time in a completely on-chain and permissionless manner. So yeah, I mean, I would say that's pretty much the super high level.
Yeah, no, we've gone over a lot of this. The last time we went into a lot of the money Lego potential. And I think in our first podcast, we talked a lot about StakeHub. But I do think maybe just kind of do a quick refresher, I think, of what StakeHub is. And we can get into a little bit of that and then talk about whatever you want to talk about regarding the launch tomorrow and what we can do with kHYPE.
For sure, yeah. I think I'll also take some time here to ensure that questions are answered as well, in case people do have questions as to how Kinetic works. We'll run through a few. Uh, Ideally, would like to hear some mechanical questions, if any, because I think this will probably be like the bread and butter as far as understanding the value of kHYPE in the ecosystem, what you could do with it, how it works, how it's different to native staking, etc. But anyway, yeah. So if anybody has any, please feel free to start thinking about that, and then we could cover that later as well. So I think that'd be great.
Absolutely.
So yeah, to kick it off, ultimately touching on the stake up part. Essentially, on Hyperliquid, when you go to stake your HYPE tokens, you have the selection today to stake between 21 validators. 5 of these validators are foundation validators, and then um, the remaining 16 are independent validators from HFT firms to just general independent validators, right? That may be validator operators, whether personally or as a business. So these are people that come from all over the space, no matter what corner or niche they're from. Essentially, they offer a validating service and have decided to essentially come and act as a validator node on Hyperliquid. And for those that don't really understand how this works, essentially, um, being a validator means that you are participating in consensus across the network. And essentially, decision making is split between all of the validators at any given time. So this helps to ensure that networks are decentralized and don't rely on a central or singular type of party to execute any decisions. So in the case of Hyperliquid, this is anything from delistings to general network upgrades of any kind. So yeah, I hope that gives a refresher. But the validator business is pretty interesting, right? You can essentially have situations that exist over all types of proof of stake networks. Proof of stake meaning that you stake tokens to secure the network, meaning you increase the economic value required to attack it, right? So, validators can, like, obviously as a validator, you want to have more stake, right? It means you have more assets under management, you control more stake. It could increase your profitability because the more stake you have, the more of a commission you're able to take on rewards. So there's a very direct business model for validators that incentivizes them to accrue as much stake as possible. So in this case, sometimes under the table deals are struck that see validators get more stake that they otherwise organically would not have acquired, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just one example of many. But StakeHub mitigates this entirely, and on top of it, just generally with regards to LSTs, or for those that don't know the abbreviation, the LST stands for a liquid staking token, like kHYPE. Liquid staking providers typically select the validators, so validators once again have a huge incentive to cozy up to liquid staking protocols to essentially win their business. Right? You're usually dealing with tons of stake that will then come into the validators, I guess you could say, assets under management, if you will. It's not custodied by them; it's usually delegated to them, but it's just stake that they control and have a say over, right? So I hope that makes sense overall. But StakeHub again just mitigates this by essentially scoring these validators on performance metrics alone, right? So We don't have any direct relations with validators on the StakeHub side. So nothing that they could do or say can kind of affect how we score the validator. So the formula itself is actually completely a black box. But maybe to speak a little bit further on that. By the way, can you guys hear me okay? Like, am I good?
Yeah, just for a second there,
Okay.
it glitched out, but for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
entirety of
Yeah.
it, you're good.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, the idea ultimately is that while there's a direct incentive, there is nothing that validators can do or say on the Kinetic protocol side to essentially increase their score, right? It doesn't matter how I feel about them or any of the rest of the team members feel. It essentially just comes down to how they've performed and how the StakeHub algorithm chooses to score them based off of existing metrics. And they are growing as well, right? So we recently shipped an upgrade to StakeHub, which made scores actually flatter, which was funny. So the disparity between validator scores is not so huge. And on the other side of that equation as well, um, is what we think is more interesting on the performance side is like the weighting for performance was increased as opposed to stake, which is one of the factors that was initially considered. So yeah, just a lot of really interesting stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna
happening.
say
Yeah.
you kind of had to mitigate for the fact that by far the five top are the foundation. I don't know if that was kind of why you made these changes, but I mean, otherwise StakeHub could be like directing a lot just to foundation stakers, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's right. So the idea is like initially the system needs to work, right? If we're going to be managing at the kinetic level, I mean, like, through the contracts, all this stake, it can't just be left to chance, essentially, right? So the idea is that, this system has to work. Therefore, it was essentially, kind of incepted off of a more simpleton, I guess you could say, esque scoring system, essentially, to ensure that everything works properly. And then over time, it just continues to get upgraded and then be more and more performance and uptime focused and eventually kind of dwindle down to zero weighting on stake as a whole. So, yeah, very different than when we first talked about it. As it's now on mainnet, so people can go to the Kinetic website, go to validators, and then take a look at the scores there. You get to look at some validator metrics as well, a chart on their uptime and performance. So, yeah, it's just a lot of cool stuff.
Sick. Yeah, I think we can like, in like 10, 15 minutes, maybe get people up to ask questions, but I have a few that I think similar to the Stake Hub that could cover some of these bases. Just the easy ones. Like in terms of accruing value as a liquid staking token, does kHYPE is not going to be equal to one hype over time, or how is it going to accrue value?
Yeah, exactly. So basically, the exchange rate between kHYPE and HYPE changes. So you will see a constant amount of kHYPE in your wallet. Um, so similar to if you're on EVM right now and you have like 10,000 HYPE in your wallet, right? You're going to see that same number unless you actually do something with it, like you swap out or you deposit that into a lending protocol or something. You'll see that constant number, right? So this is the interesting part, the seamless part of kHYPE, is that you can essentially, like when you own or hold kHYPE, you are owning staked HYPE, essentially. So every single day at midnight UTC, when the staking rewards on Hyperliquid refresh, the amount of HYPE that your kHYPE can claim is gradually higher every single time. So it equates to right now 2.2% a year, which is the exact staking yield because Kinetic takes no fees on the staking rewards. So it's as if you were staking, but have the complete freedom and liquidity to do whatever it is that you want, right? Whether it's borrow against the kHYPE. So in this case, you're borrowing against staked HYPE and your collateral is yielding. Now you could use it as a paired asset on AMMs. You could eventually trade the yield and the principal value of kHYPE as well. There's just so much that you're going to be able to do. You can run delta neutral trades where the spot leg of the trade is in kHYPE, meaning that you're squeezing out an extra 2.2% yield annually from that. Whereas like if you're just holding naked HYPE, you don't get really anything else outside of just the HYPE exposure and just make sure you're completely hedged. So yeah, there's a lot to it ultimately. Um, it really is, as you mentioned early on, it's the foundation of a perfect money Lego, right? And that's what we want HYPE to be. So that's how we designed kHYPE.
Awesome. Yeah, I just saw an alert that you guys just did the first kHYPE through Core Writer. I don't know if
Yeah,
just
that's right. Yeah, so as we speak, the first kHYPE was actually just minted. Yeah, historical.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I have a couple, I think maybe a different space we can talk about like HIP3 stuff or depending on how many questions we get. But guys, feel free to reply with questions that you have. One I think would be a good thing to go over is like once you have your kHYPE, I imagine there's some protocols that are already integrating it. I know, for example, we had LoopType last week and they were talking about how they're going to be using kHYPE. I don't know if you want to go into some of the people that are planning to use it already and future integrations.
Yeah, it's a good question. So, to my knowledge, there's over 10 that are going to be pretty much immediate or within the first couple hours of kHYPE going live tomorrow. Felix, Hyperland, Looping Collective, um, Valantis as well, yeah, Project X. There's going to be a bunch of them. TimeSwap, HyperSwap, all the dexes that you could think of, and maybe several other money markets may be missing. Apologies. I know HyperFi will be there as well. So there's going to be a lot in terms of available integrations pretty much immediately. Um, I'm very excited to see what people do with it ultimately. I mean, we've created this as like, as you could say, users of DeFi ourselves, like heavily. So yeah, being heavily kHYPE coded means that you're just using kHYPE in every possible DeFi, strategy you can where it makes sense to, right? So this was designed with the ultimate flexibility in mind, the ultimate composability. There's no action required on the end of the user to wrap their tokens before using it. So it's very, very, out of the box ready for DeFi day one. Like immediately when you mint, you're going to be able to go and do whatever you'd like. So yeah, all the way up to institutional support as well, which I'm sure many saw the recent iHYPE announcement, which has been very exciting. We've onboarded a few merchants like Flowdesk and IMC Trading who will help institutions basically acquire and then on top of that stake their hype through Kinetiq, which is going to be very interesting. So, I mean, it's just, we've really thought about this and gone about this in a way where, integrations are not going to ever be an issue. Um, it's just more so going to be about what you as a user ultimately want to do with your hype. And more importantly, we want you to be in staked hype rather than not staked hype. So yeah, that's the high level on the integration front.
Yeah, I think for anybody who really wants to get into the full depth, we had a great conversation on the last podcast about kHYPE as a money Lego. But part of what you want, like, your goal as a project, I think, is that a lot of people, when they're using hype on the EVM, is they're using kHYPE because they're at least getting their yield on that.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
So
Exactly.
buying
That's right.
NFTs, trading coins, like that's the goal, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like people could literally price it. Like you could, like say you own a Hypio, which I'm assuming is pretty much everyone here. You could eventually, at least the goal would be, platforms like Drip or Liquid Loot, integrate kHYPE as like an asset that people can price the NFTs in, and then you can essentially just choose to take payment in kHYPE, right? So like whatever hype you are earning, essentially is in the form of staked hype already. So you don't have to do anything. You don't have to come and integrate with the Kinetiq smart contracts to go and actually mint kHYPE. You can just price things in kHYPE. Another example of this is, pairing kHYPE against Buddy, for example, right? Like you can literally sell off your memes or buy memes with kHYPE using concentrated liquidity. So that's an example of the extent of integrations, right? Like it's really composable to the extent you can do whatever you want with it. Um, I'm excited for new DeFi primitives as well that would use kHYPE as just a general base asset, right? What would be great one day is if people raised money in kHYPE, right? Like that would be, just really cool ultimately. And it's leaving money on the table, not using it, right? That's the idea. And who knows? What if staking rewards change in the future, and the Hyperliquid team or just overall, I guess you could say, foundation and like validators vote on increasing staking rewards, right? You would be leaving more money on the table if that happened. So yeah,
It's also just the best coin, period. You know what I mean? Like when you're saying like we're gonna sell Hypios for K, I was like, great. Not only are we denominated in the best asset in crypto, but now we're denominated in the staked version of it. That's even more expensive. But
yeah,
all right, yeah, no, what was I gonna say? Yeah, no, it's just that hype is the best. Even with 2.2% yield, you're getting 2.2% yield on an asset that like just look at the chart right now. Like, what I mean? It
yeah.
doesn't want more.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to run up the numbers on that with regards to what the potential missed yield can be if you're not staking your hype right now. And basically, there's been up until today, or I should say tomorrow, when kHYPE actually goes live, there's been a trade-off that every single Hyperliquid user has had to make. Do I stake my hype and I just capture the staking rewards, for whatever speculative reason that may be, or just for the sole purpose of picking up your 2%? Or do I unstake and I try to outperform the staking yield on HyperEVM? And obviously the HyperEVM appetite has been insane. There's over 25 million HYPE on HyperEVM, which is insane. I mean, it's a ridiculous amount of money. What is that, 1.5 billion or something right now? That is just not earning any yield, right? So while 2% is not necessarily anything to write home about, it is still something that auto compounds on Hyperliquid by staking, and is ultimately extra yield at the end of the day, extra dry powder for those who enjoy the trenches, an extra Hypio over enough time. You know what I mean? Yeah, there's so many ways to think about it. Yeah, it is real. Yeah, for sure.
Like I think Hyperland has this great feature where whenever you load in there, it's like you have lazy assets. I think it perfectly describes like this HyperEVM trade where I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like I have 500 hype sitting on floor, and I'm like not doing anything with it. And I'm like, okay, I'll put it in here. And then when you have kHYPE, they're like, oh, you got lazy kHYPE. That's you got your yield and put it onto some EVM asset too. So it's like it's a double dip.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So that's the idea as a whole, right? Like it's not just an LST. It's, I guess you could say, helpful financial infrastructure for HYPE, right? Which is denominated in this, I guess you could say, this vehicle that we call this LST. But there's just so much that comes from it, right? There's like insane strategies that can be ran, more juice to be squeezed from those, and then on top of it, it's just a seamless and kind of composability. I guess you could say like UX ad for anybody doing anything on Hyperliquid, whether it's trading memes, NFTs, or really anything at all. So yeah, that's the high level. I mean, can of course continue going on, but if without boring everyone.
No, we also covered a lot of it on the last two spaces, so we don't need to retread so much ground when people, the podcast exists. I think at this point we could invite people who want to come up.
Let's do
questions, or just reply with questions if you don't want to speak. And in the meantime, we could like talk about the market, or we could talk about some of this HIP3 stuff, because I imagine you're interested in looking into that space at some point. But
sure.
it might be a distraction from what's going on today this week.
I'm not gonna lie, I haven't paid attention to pretty much everything besides what we're doing with kHYPE now, so I'm a little bit out of the loop.
Okay, we got HIP3. Well, yeah, I mean, you're launching kHYPE at a time when the market is looking hilariously strong for the last couple of months. We got a couple of requests up. Why don't we start with Hyperliquid? I believe Indonesia. What's up, man?
Nice.
What's up, man?
Good community.
Hypio, Omnia. Hi. Hello, listeners. Sorry, I came in late. But can you re-explain, like, what's the difference between, kHYPE is core writer LST, right? Can you explain the difference between core writer LST between core writer LST and the
EOA LST?
look like the current LST right now, like LHYPE or STHYPE.
Sure. I think LHYPE is slightly different. LHYPE is basically like I guess you could say a wrapped version of it in one place, where essentially you can get leveraged exposure to HYPE, where they basically handle the depositing and then subsequent looping of the LST. So LHYPE will be using kHYPE under the hood, just like it uses STHYPE today. It'll be using kHYPE under the hood essentially to power its strategy. So LHYPE, I would say, is different. STHYPE, on the other hand, to my understanding, essentially is smart contract you deposit into, where an EOA, or what's known as an externally owned address, which is essentially just a wallet in control of whoever's running STHYPE, that can essentially just manually perform the action of moving the stake from HyperEVM to HyperCore and then delegating it on your behalf. So they've handpicked the validators, which is very different than what we've discussed that StakeHub does, where there's no bias, there's no selection. That's just based on performance. And then based off that, they then handle the transaction execution, where they're delegating it on behalf of stakers. So when you stake there, you're basically signing away the HYPE and the ability to like what to do with it. Essentially, the contract will handle the accounting, as in like if you come back and you ask for X amount of HYPE that you've deposited, then it will, I'm sure, be there, or like be retrieved for you. But the point being that it's different from a perspective of the contract not necessarily handling every single component of that. I guess you could say transaction lifecycle, right? So as a co-writer, LST Kinetiq essentially takes in the stake the same way any other LST would, which is through a smart contract. And then the smart contract, here's where the main differences kick in. Smart contract then handles all of the transfer between Hyper EVM to Hypercore using co-writer, and then the subsequent delegation as well. So it's not any of our contributors that are behind the trigger, so to speak, that are manually pulling it every single time something needs to happen. The contract is instructed to do this and then handles it on behalf of the users. Now, why does that even matter? Why should people care? Well, particularly because of the fact that this is completely trustless, right? Just like you would use any other blockchain, right? You do want to account for, things that are trusted or trustless. So I guess you could say that's one component of it as well. And then if you care about validator selection, all we care about is making sure that the more performant validators earn the stake, and then, allowing that set to grow alongside the network as well. As validators become better, higher quality, the network grows in terms of number of active validators. The Kinetiq smart contract and StakeHub should be able to essentially, determine that it's time to essentially delegate between, initially 7 validators, and maybe this grows to 9 or 11 or 15, 21, etc. So I hope this helps ultimately, just with a little bit of a mechanical breakdown, high level at least, where Kinetiq and kHYPE is very different than what exists today.
Thanks for the explanation, man.
Hakushu, did you have a question?
Yeah, I gotta say that was a good question and a pretty interesting explanation. So appreciated that. No, a pretty easy question here, man. And I only asked because I got to get on a flight tomorrow, and my hardware wallet doesn't travel with me. But is there like time for the launch tomorrow?
I wish you could provide that, but yeah, man, I ain't no time.
All right. Well, I'll be on standby, and hopefully
Just a day, no time.
it in. Right on.
Well, I will say here, there's no caps, by the way, so you don't have to rush.
Okay, that's good to know. At least.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So I hope that helps.
Hold on.
But thanks, friend. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
All right, this one's a bit unfair of a question to ask a fellow team member, but how does it feel that we've now burnt our first kHYPE and sacrificed it to the almighty core writer?
Yeah, core writer in control. Oh man, it's good. I don't know if you guys all saw that in the MLM channel, but that was really cool. As we were starting this, the first kHYPE being burnt is pretty surreal for sure. So yeah, overall, just really excited for everyone to get their hands on it. Couldn't be more humbled by the support and interest from everyone and using it. So yeah, it's been fun. Almost a year already putting this all together from start to start, if that makes sense, because we're really just getting started tomorrow. So yeah, really just excited to see what you all do with it.
Yeah, I think unless we get any more questions, there's one in the replies I see now. This one is, how are you planning to balance deep liquidity and yield incentives without introducing undue dilution or depegging risks, especially if it's composable across future DeFi protocols on Hyperliquid?
Yeah, on incentive stuff, I don't think it even makes sense to even bring that up overall, just because starting from a point of incentives isn't necessarily a great place to begin as a builder, right? If you need to incentivize something, right, then the question we should be asking ourselves is this really needed? And when we were thinking about this close to a year ago, the reality is that answer was no. And if we think about, up until today, is this still needed? The answer was still absolutely, this was needed. There was not something that we would use. And today there wasn't something that we would use until, kHYPE goes live tomorrow. So I hope that makes sense from just a general framing perspective, where we've thought about this. So that's why from an incentive perspective, it's not something that we think about much with regards to deep liquidity and whatnot. I guess the easiest way to think about this is if something is extremely composable and people are really comfortable holding it from a security perspective, it should have really deep liquidity on secondary markets. And thankfully, tons of, if not all of the AMMs that are on Hyper EVM have been extremely supportive of this and have reached out in order to ensure that this is integrated from the get-go. So really excited to see what people do on secondary markets with regards to kHYPE. I think a lot of AMMs are going to be, rolling out their own incentives for it. So that should be interesting. I mean, from a LP perspective, but I guess that's all I could say on that front. But yeah, just from a general utilization perspective. Like what we care mostly about is ensuring that people are extremely comfortable with regards to liquidity provisioning because they could see in the contracts, how they can redeem the kHYPE on the other side in the event that they provide liquidity and the kHYPE, the HYPE that they provide is sold into kHYPE or vice versa. Like you're buying kHYPE with your HYPE. So as long as it's redeemable, it really shouldn't be an issue. So a lot of people see trades this way, like yield trades, I guess you could say, where some AMMs will provide a base level of incentives for just leveraging kHYPE HYPE liquidity provisioning, and then some people will take this as like some sort of like initial delta neutral trade and then add whatever yield on top, right? So like that's how some LPs look at it, not all, right? Some people want to balance their kHYPE to HYPE exposure, so they may take on half of their HYPE in kHYPE and then use the rest to LP, right? So that it's constantly shifting all the time as people trade in and out of it. So yeah, having talked with everyone from overall, just I guess you could say general retail that would leverage Kinetiq to institutions, like we've heard an extremely diverse array of answers with regards to how people would leverage, kHYPE in their strategies. So I hope that makes perfect sense. But on the dilution side, maybe I would ask for some clarity there. I'm not sure what you meant by that, but yeah, I don't know how that would relate with regards to staking. We've seen like 7 or 8 million HYPE on stake natively from the queue, and this didn't really put much of an increase on staking rewards as well, because of the fact that most of the stake comes from the Hyper Foundation and team allocation. So if that's what you meant by dilution, that's my immediate answer. But yeah, otherwise, in case you wanted to clarify, in the event that wasn't the question. But yeah, I hope that helps.
Sure. I think we have Juicy with .hype here. You have a question?
Hey, I'm in team. I
Yo.
kind of forgot I was on the main account, not my personal. But yeah, looking forward to what you guys are doing tomorrow. I've been kind of like waiting for a long time for this. One of the questions I want to ask was like, you kind of brought up the institutional side of things. So kind of like future forward looking, and even in the process today, as you kind of start onboarding these institutions, how are you guys thinking about kHYPE's roles where you're dealing with environments where things like AML, KYC, or just like counterparty risk controls are non-negotiable for them, right?
Yep.
And I agree. Do you kind of see how kHYPE evolves to support like permissioned modules or things that are like more identity aware staking when you're kind of working with these types of organizations?
Yeah, it's a good question. So kHYPE actually doesn't even fit into that ask altogether. That's why iHYPE was created. So iHYPE effectively leverages the kHYPE architecture entirely because we believe it is sound. It's been quadruple audited, and we're extremely confident in the design there, and it'll continue to get audited, right? Like we're not really stopping at what's happened. We're just going to continue making sure security is up to standard. But it leverages that architecture to essentially create a unique offering for institutions. So an example of where institutions cannot necessarily come in and leverage kHYPE the same way that maybe myself can or who else can, right? Is through lack of commingling, right? Like you cannot commingle assets with a general pool of 10,000 other people, 5,000 of which may hold a Hypio and the other 5,000 may hold, I don't know, Buddy, right? So this is kind of a hard red line for institutions. So iHYPE is created as this completely KYB'd and whitelisted flow for users to come and acquire kHYPE through, their own means or working with our merchants, like I mentioned a little earlier, like Flowdesk or IMC and maybe several others that we'll bring on. So whoever they'd like to work with there, they can. Who would facilitate the acquisition of HYPE for them, be whitelisted on the iHYPE contract to then go and mint it directly to their custodian of choice. Fireblocks, Anchorage, Zodia, Copper, ItGo, etc. Right? Like the list goes on and on. So this would be how institutions come in and leverage the Kinetiq architecture to come and get exposure pretty much immediately. Why does this even matter? Right? Like that's the big question is like, okay, how long would they need this for? How long would this even be helpful for, etc. Like you could just ask tons of questions on this. And this matters most importantly today because of the fact that the infrastructure to support this type of, I guess you could say, easy acquisition of HYPE doesn't necessarily exist. There's one large or tier 1 custodian that supports HYPE VMs, and maybe not all of the institutions that are interested in buying HYPE may want to hold it through them. So they may be waiting for others. We're working hand in hand with some others, particularly one that's going to be supporting in Q3 this year. So that would be pretty huge. And we think is going to be a pretty large unlock. But the idea being it comes down to mandates, right? Some funds will have the ability to actually, come on chain and do it themselves. And that's where you see, lists on lists of funds that are apparently being spotted owning HYPE. And then, there's obviously the ones that don't own HYPE yet because they literally cannot, right? Like from a compliance and regulatory perspective, they can't. So this is where iHYPE comes in as a solution. And then what happens like after the custodians arrive? Like, where does iHYPE have a moat? Well, we believe that since the architecture is most optimal, right, we're able to connect them with the validators that they would want to stake with, etc. We believe that iHYPE would essentially serve as the perfect foundation for eventually like StakeHYPE ETFs even, right? So yeah, I mean, these are just some things that matter to institutions, which may not matter to the average, buddy hype LP on your decks of choice. So that's an interesting way to think about it. I think just from the lens of like why can or can't some institutions acquire. I hope this gives some insight as to all this little infrastructure coming into place. Well, maybe little is a little bit of an understatement, but all this infrastructure one by one, making it really possible for more and more flows on Hyperliquid. So yeah, I hope that helps. Long-winded answer, but if this helps, guys.
No, that does. And yeah, thank you so much for entertaining and best of luck with launch tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it. And yeah, congrats on .hype. That was really cool.
If you got another one, Ian.hype, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you for having me up. I love what you guys are building. I'm really excited for it.
Thanks, man.
One question I got for you is when this drops, are you guys going to plan to inject liquidity so we can swap out and swap in pretty easily? Or is this going to be staking only?
Good question. So upon staking, people could do anything, right? So money markets will likely support in the following hours, pretty much immediately. DEXs should support immediately as well. So we won't necessarily be the LP, but several community members have signaled that they would like to do that. And nothing stops anybody from doing that, right? Like anybody can immediately upon launch go and ship their own kHYPE LP and just capture all the volume if they want, right? Or at least a larger percentage of it. So maybe that's alpha, I don't know, but that's an idea for some people. I know a lot of people out there have just seen like over the chain, if you will, like taking advantage of providing liquidity early for whatever reason. So yeah, I mean, it's just going to be an interesting, I guess you could say, culmination of events where kHYPE launches and then people who are eager LPs will just go and provide that secondary liquidity. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. It won't be us, but we do expect really thick liquidity within the week. So it should be fun.
Perfect. One more alpha question. I've been seeing the Kinetiq hats been getting picked up on the Hypio floor. You got any alpha for that?
There's definitely no alpha. Actually, I had dropped a disclaimer in the Discord. I'll read it out loud because I have the picture on hand. Actually, funny enough, somebody sent a screenshot yesterday. So we've been asked a lot of these hats. Shout out Hypio man because they included Kinetiq hat in the collection last minute. We had just connected and I literally had asked. I was like, "Yo, it'd be super cool if you threw Kinetiq on here." And actually, it was our old logo. So there's some funny lore on the Kinetiq hats is that it literally uses the old Kinetiq logo. That's why you don't see the new one. That's why I see a little bit more green, but yeah, insane lore. So yeah, I mean, we simply like the hats, right? Like, everyone on the team, you could probably tell at this point has a Kinetiq hat IPO. It's just about sending a message, but I'll read the disclaimer. So purchasing a Kinetiq hat with the expectation of financial return is akin to trusting a sweaty trench trader clutching 99% of a meme coin supply. Utterly delusional. These hats are for Vibe and Kinetiq maxing only. So if you're buying with any other intention, you're probably brain dead. Proceed at your own risk, and we thank Hypio for including Kinetiq hats into the collection. So I appreciate everyone who enjoys Kinetiq hats, but I think that disclaimer was very well needed because yeah, we get the question pretty often. So yeah, man, I hope that helps.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me up.
No problem.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'm glad they'll be included the hat, and I appreciate, Kinetiq team's been huge Hypio support the whole time, and I know the whole Hypio community is super pumped to get in the mix. I can't wait to get some kHYPE, and everybody, I'm sure many people feel this way. We actually do have another question. Yeah, every time I think we don't have any more questions, we get one per first request. So it's just a good sign of people interested.
Yeah, indeed.
How's it going, X?
Yo, what's good? Oh, Connecticut? That's fire.
Maybe he just wanted to camp a speaker spot. I don't know. He just wanted to
He's
fly to the
muted.
Connecticut.
He's-
Actually,
he's-
yeah, you're muted, bro. Unless you're just trying to show off that you got your clout token.
Damn, that's kind of crazy.
And next time we do a podcast, just have everybody with the Connecticut just camp. speaker
Bro just got a
spots.
free slot. That's crazy.
Hey, X, are you trying to speak? I saw your mic just came on. Oh, no, he's listening. Man, maybe it's
Fuck,
maybe it's
good.
glitchy for him. It sounded like I saw his mic went on and he went back. I'm listening.
Yeah, it's all good. Yo, I see Cass here. Cass makes some really cool kinetic graphics. So just want to say thank you to Cass really quick because yeah, guy's really talented.
He is super talented with the 3D stuff.
Yeah, he's made some
we
cool
got-
stuff.
X back now.
Oh, he's back. Yo,
Yo,
good.
I'm heavily kHYPE coded, so I just wanted to say GG's to the boys. They're cooking hard as fuck. And just put the hat on the Hypio low, bro. And that's why I was inclined to drop 14 bands on my Hypio. I probably would have dropped 25 bands, but I got it cheap for 14, so it is what it is.
That's crazy, lore.
You know what I mean? So
That is
it's funny.
You're just spinning facts, honestly.
Yeah, the day before I could have bought one for 7, but I wanted to challenge myself, so I paid double just for fun. That's how much I believe on.
I just asked Ben there. Here's my rent in a similar.
Yeah, I literally asked him. Like when I went to the dealership, I told him charge me 100% interest because it's like, why would I not grind in my sleep like that? You know what I mean? Like, oh, it just makes that much sense.
God, bro. Hypio.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
100%, bro. So, anyways, yeah, I'm gonna go to BMW tomorrow and tell them like, yo, if you don't take kHYPE, then I'm just gonna buy you out, anyways. So it's cool.
I don't want it.
Anyways, I don't want to shit talk
Thanks,
too long, but congrats you guys, and yeah, I'm really excited, really excited.
Yeah, sick.
Heavily gotta thank you
anywhere. Heavily KHYPE coded.
That was a great, very welcome speaker, X. I'm glad we got you talking. King, Jack, do you have a question?
Yo, what's up, guys? Yeah, I had a question for the Kinetic guys. How okay, like I know you guys has the validator, right? With Hyperion and all this big stuff with the stock market. How the how the kHYPE and everything blend together, or is it just two separate things? Two separate
Yeah, it's a good
processes?
question. I mean, I guess there's some overlap, right? We had a couple of public companies basically announced that they would be using, like working with Kinetic in some way, shape, or form. The first one was HYLQ, which is publicly traded in Canada, for example, that they'll be depositing into iHYPE, which was really nice. I believe they also have the mandate to use kHYPE if they want, so I believe that's being worked on. Hyperion was another really interesting one, given that it's based in the US. So we've basically combined forces with them, along with Peer 2, who's a very experienced validator operator. They are one of the Lido validators, for example. For those that don't know, Lido has a select amount of validators essentially on Ethereum who secure, I believe, over 30 or $40 billion worth of stake. So they're a part of that set of various validators who run Lido delegations. So yeah, we work at Peer 2 along with Hyperion to essentially run a validator for the Hyperliquid network. Now, you asked a really good question. Like, how is it all connected? And the reality is, to an extent, it's actually not. It's more so like a public good for the network and just shows alignment. The Kinetic team, the Hyperion team, and Peer 2 are basically powering a validator for the Hyperliquid network. The more people that come and provide this service to the network, the more decentralized it becomes, right? That's the idea, ultimately. So it gets no bias from the Kinetic protocol. So as you guys can see, actually completely transparently, even though we run that validator alongside Hyperion and Peer 2, there's no special scoring that's provided, meaning that just because it's our validator, we're not getting anything extra. We have to earn it just alongside everyone else from the validator perspective. So it's a good question. I mean, it's not necessarily connected. What could be really cool in terms of like potential future collaboration is, who knows if Hyperion eventually gets approval or the mandate to leverage kHYPE or iHYPE in some way, shape, or form, that would be amazing, right? So we've built the foundation for them to come in and do that if regulations allow. So yeah, I hope that helps, man.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, good question. By the way, nice background on the Hypio. The Pokemon's like I go pretty crazy for.
Alpha, yes. Let's fucking go.
Yeah, it's
I think our last speaker today. Yeah, great questions, guys. We have awesome speakers. Thank you guys so much for coming up and Omnia. Looking forward to see what Dobbins. What do you got to say today? You're having a good day.
Oh shit. So guys, I didn't know I was up here. I'm working and just listening.
nice, man.
I must have felt fingered, so my bad.
That was wrong. Like, wait, what?
What a Chad, man.
Dude, I heard my name. I was like, oh, hold on, what is
What a
going on?
Chad.
All right, well, that's a fun note to end it on.
That was pretty
thank
funny.
you guys, everybody. Yeah.
Imagine like, hey, what do you got your headphones on for? Hey, man, you better watch your mouth. I'm on Hypio Spaces.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they don't
we had
know.
some-
They need to respect the Hypio.
Put the hat on the hype yellow, bro.
Put the hat on the Hypio, bro.
All right. Well, thank you guys. I won't take too much more of your time, Omnia. It's been a good 45-minute space. And like I said, we have 2 full podcasts with really interesting conversation with Omnia, talking about Kinetiq in our Hyperfluent. You go hyperfluent_HL, I believe, on Twitter. And check those out if you want to learn more about Kinetiq ahead of the launch tomorrow. Obviously, check out Kinetiq Twitter and all their materials. But looking forward to the launch. Omnia, I know you've been building this for well over half a year, right?
Yeah, the whole team
Congrats.
is just insanely locked in. Wouldn't be possible without everyone who's played every single hand in it. So very excited. Thanks for all the love, obviously, from the Hypio team and subsequent community. We're one of you guys as well. So yeah, everyone on our end is a Hypio, right? So that's kind of a non-negotiable, yeah.
Yeah, well, likewise, we appreciate all your support. And, as everybody knows, you guys are real members of our community, not just kind of like farming Hypio or pretending to be, everybody. None of you guys are real members who are like, participating and stuff. So we love you guys, and we're super excited to see this Hypio team ship something so cool. And we can't wait to see it succeed and help in the ways that we can. So
yeah,
we won't take too much of your time anymore. We'll let you go.
Awesome, guys. Well,
thank you all
have a
the
good one.
speakers. Omnia.
Yeah, thanks everyone for the questions and listening as well. I mean, just really glad to have your ear for a bit. And please, if there's any deeper questions, obviously you could DM any of us and then reach out on Discord as well. So yeah, see you guys on the other side.
Hell yeah. Have a good day, guys. Good luck with the launch tomorrow.
Take care, guys. Yeah, thanks so much, man. All right, peace.